Hey guys, this is Sumit and I'm back again with a video tutorial on creating a scene representing the northern lights or the Aurora Borealis. This would be a particular scene where I won't be actually using any mesh or using any image to simulate that kind of a northern light effects. Instead, I will be doing everything in Scratch in the node editor. So I hope you guys may find it interesting. So, and without any further delay, let's get started to the Blender. So here am I in my Blender application. I'll just get rid of this scene and let's get down to business. And of course I'll be turning on my screencast key in order to have the display right over there. And for this scene I don't want my default cube and the default light, so I'll just delete him. And now I want my camera to be aligned to the front orthographic view. So in order to do that, I'll at first hit numpad 5 and then numpad 1, and then holding Ctrl Alt and numpad 0, I've aligned my camera to that of the front orthographic view, as you can see over here. Now one thing I want to explain here, I want my camera a little bit up to this purely front orthographic view. So holding shift and then holding middle mouse button, if I'm dragging my middle mouse, if I'm hovering my mouse down, you can see that it has got perfectly aligned to the scene that I actually wanted. Now in order to enable this kind of drag movement, you have to at first turn on this feature, lock camera to view. Otherwise, if it is turned off, you can and if you're attempting this one by holding shift and pressing this middle mouse button and hovering the mouse down, automatically you will see that the camera is actually not moving, but you are actually panning. So in order to lock the panning and zoom quality with the camera lens, you have to enable this option here. So having this done, I'll at first right from the beginning I'll be setting up my world setup, because that's the most important thing in this scene. So, and in order to do that, let me at first select some of the options for my camera at first. So selecting the camera, going to the camera tab, here I will describe what kind of a camera is it. So I want this Canon APS-C camera. It is suitable for this kind of a scene, and for landscape photography I've seen that the focal length of about 18.8 is good. 18.8 millimeters is good for creating some landscape photography. So I'll drag it down a little bit, maybe like this, just in order to simulate that it's actually human range. And here what I'll be doing is to turn on some of the options in the compositions. I'll turn on the rule of thirds here. So now you can see that the horizon or the grid flow actually is aligned properly with that of the bottom 3/4 of my camera here. And now I'll split my view into two different views, and for the second view for the second window here I'll choose node editor, and I'll start my work right away. Excuse me for that. And in order to have this kind of an interpolation between this node setup as well as my lightings, so I'll just actually enable the viewport rendering engine here. So excuse me for that. So in order to enable that viewport rendering engine, I'll just hit Shift Z. So this will enable my viewport rendering, and just click on this tab, which enables the type of data of my world input, and then click use nodes. So this will enable to edit my world view right in the node editor. So now you can see, as it is actually here, the background color is gray. So I will introduce some of the nodes here, and while doing this I'll try to explain as much as I can so as to make it more convenient to you people. So I'll add a texture which would be a sky texture here and plug the color into the background color. So automatically you can see that the sky has been created, but the horizon is actually moving too much ahead of this bottom line here. I want this horizon to be aligned with this one. So what I'll do, click on my middle mouse button and holding it down, I'll just hover my mouse up a little bit, and you can see it's actually perfectly aligned with this line here. Now the color here is a little bit dark, so what I'll be doing, I'll at first turn on the turbidity to be about 9 which will enable some sort of a dusky environment here. And for the coloring of the sky, I'll just use a brighten contrast node so as to enable some sort of a control here. And for the contrast, I'll be using 0.2. This will create some sort of a evening or dusk environment for my scene. Now for the ground algae, I'll just reduce it to 0.2, so it will darken my horizon here a little bit more, and maybe the contrast I would be giving 0.25 so as to simulate more of this area like this darkened one. And yeah, I'm satisfied with this world setup. And now it's time to add some stars to my scene. So in order to add the stars, of course you can add a UV sphere and start to emit some particles right from the beginning, but I won't go that far. I will be doing the entire stuff in the node editor because this will enhance much faster rendering. And let me give it a try. I have seen a lot of options of creating, a lot of tutorials of creating the stars using UV spheres and some other meshes. So I was just thinking, why can't I do this in the node editor? So let me give it a try. So in order to add the stars, what I'll be doing, I'll be introducing a shader which will be a mixed shader. Plug that in between the background, the first background and the material output. Obviously you can see that it's darkened a little bit. Now I'll use another shader which would be a background, of course, and plug the output to the input of the second shader, and it has turned total white because of the fact that the background color, the second background color, is actually white. And why is my skies not actually showing? Because of the fact that the factor value here of this mix shader is actually taking 50% of this one and 50% of this background color. Now the first shader or the first color, the sky texture that I had used, was actually pretty dark and it lacked some sort of gainness. Sorry about this noise, it's my dog, she's disturbing me. Anyway, so that enables that is actually too dim or too dark, so it is actually being hid by this much brighter background color. So in order to this is actually what I want my stars to be, and the color here, because stars, I want to give different shaders of the stars. So in order to add some variations in the color, I'll go to the converter and add a color ramp to it, and I'll just plug the color output to the color input of my background color, and here I will define some stars. So the first color I will be taking to be pure white, and the second one I'll just click on this plus button to add another slider here. The second one I'll be selecting a little bit blue, and the third one here I'll be taking, let me turn the blue over here, and for the third slider I'll be selecting something like a little bit of a yellow, yeah, yellow, or maybe something like that. Yeah, so there are three different channels of the color. One is white, the other is something blue, and the third is something yellowish tinted or cream like, saturated cream like color. Now still you can see that the color is actually not showing properly, because although there are three different channels of the colors, only the bluish is showing here. This is again due to the fact that this color ramp or this background color will take the color which is more saturated or more primary colors. So for this it has taken blue as it is the primary color, and the other one are secondary color, although this is actually a primary color all indeed, but still it has taken the blue channel. So let me control this one by just selecting the interpolation to be about constant. So this will enable a constancy of my color channels, maybe not constant, maybe ease would be good enough for this scene. And how my color will be divided, I will just define it with a noise texture here, which will give variations to my color according to the noise. So I'll just plug the factor to the factor input of the color ramp, which now you can see that there are various differences or variations of the colors already enabled. Now as I've already aligned my camera perfectly to the view, I don't need this option anymore, so I'll just click it out so that I can zoom and see how is my color being interpolated. I think the interpolation is pretty much good. So here I'll scale it up to about 12 so as to give more options or give more freedom to the interpolation of the color, and the distortion to be about 0.5. Having done this, I will do nothing to the color interpolation, only that you can see that the color is actually not showing like it is actually a stars. So what I'll be doing, it's actually still taking 50% between these two values, so I need to turn down the factor value here. So if I am turning this down, the downer, actually if you are sliding it down or sliding it left, it will enable 100% of it will actually increase the factor of my first channel, and if I'm sliding it towards the right, it will enable more and more options for this second channel here. So let me give it a quick test. Giving 0% of the factor will leave entirely this sky texture, and if I'm increasing that texture a little bit, you can see that little bit of the second texture is actually picking up, but it is not looking like a stars, is it? So in order to solve this issue, what I'll be doing, I'll introduce another texture here, which will be a noise texture. So it will bring up some noise and plug the factor into the factor to my mix shader. Now the time I had actually plugged it, another weird thing has started to happen. As you can see, although there is a variation in the colors, yet it is looking much weirder. So in order to solve that issue, I will control the flow of this noise texture by a color ramp. So go to the converter and use a color ramp, and just if I'm tweaking or playing with the slider here, the dark side, the black and the white channel, because the black channel will describe more and more of the first channel here, and the white slider will give more and more value to the second channel. So if I'm sliding it towards the white channel here, you can see that the magic has started to happen. As you can see that the noise has gone down, and if I'm turning it towards black as well, so you can see that it has altogether gone away, but still it's looking like something bluish. So what I'll be doing, I'll just change the interpolation to B-spline and add some, no, not the B-spline, it would be something like ease, and just increase the scale to about 80. See, the stars has been created here, and for the distortion I'll be taking about 20, so as to give much more freedom. But although I had taken this way up, although the sky is full of some sort of glittering substances here, yet it is not symbolizing something like the sky. So I'll just scale it a little bit down to about 70 and the distortion to be about 40, and it has gone, it has actually distributed all over my sky. And if I am changing this to now a constant, there is nothing, so I'll just leave it to linear. And although there are lots of noises present there, yet it cannot be represented as stars because it's not actually glowing. So in order to make it glow, I'll just increase the strength to about 10. Maybe it was too much, maybe 3. Yeah, 3 is good for this scene, as because you can see that there are lots of noises all around the stars, which can actually give a resemblance to the stars, but yet it's not looking too good here. So what I'll be doing, I'll just give 2.5 strength of this background and just increase the distortion even more, maybe about 48, and the scale to about, if I'm turning down the scale, then what happens, it's actually becoming more and more visible, but it's acting weird. And here for the slider, if I am sliding it all the way towards the white channel here, then some of them are actually being vanished. So this, here we are with our stars. So I'm not, little bit like this, yeah, something like that. And for this interpolation, I can also choose something like linear or something like constant. Constant is actually giving much more glittering effect to the stars, but it's actually acting weird. So I'll take cardinal. Let me choose cardinal for this value, and yeah, maybe ease. Yeah, this one is far better than the rest one. So I have taken ease for the interpolation of these colors. Now you can see that there is a weird noise actually being turned up down here, because all of this is actually acting as a world. So there is nothing to be worried about, because I will be adding a plane here in order to hide this down horizon. So everything down here will be hidden. So far so good. Now I'll just go ahead and save my project to be like Aurora, and save this one in my desktop here. Having this done, I will now move on to add now the main thing here, the Aurora Borealis. Now this node setup for the Aurora Borealis is quite huge, so what I'll be doing, I'll just select this with the box selection and make it a group, so that it will become only a single node group, so that my node editor won't be showing too messy here. And here I will rename it as sky. And for this, in order to move on, at first I will introduce another mix shader here and add a background to the second channel of the mix shader, which will be again turned white, because again I've already explained that the factor value is actually taking 50% of this channel as well as this. Right now I'll just give it another, this time I will be using a mix RGB, where I will be defining two different types of colors. This one will be a pure green, not too saturated, but with values, and the second one will be something like a red channel. Excuse me for that. Now you can see that although I've selected two different colors which is far opposite from it, yet the sky is actually taking up some of the red channel and some of the green channel and mixing them, because of the factor value of 50% here, and the interpolation is actually set up to mix. So I will be controlling this mix channel here by introducing a texture which would be a Voronoi texture, I suppose. Yeah, something like that. So this would actually control the interpolation between these two colors, and the scale I want to be increased to be about 10, and yeah, this is actually good till now. And even if you want some more control over this, you can let me in order to get some more control, because I need some of the control here. So I'll introduce a color ramp node here and just play along with the slider here with B-spline selected this time, so that there is a good interpolation between these two color nodes here. So having these things done, what I will do here is take the factor value over here by just introducing another shader, which will be another texture which will be a Voronoi texture again, and take the factor to the factor value and introduce a color ramp here again, and just play along with the slider here and leave it to B-spline. It will enable some sort of an overlay or screen effect to both of this scene. And the scale, I won't be playing anything with the scale here, because I want my scale of the Voronoi texture to be controlled by a wave texture. So plugging the factor to the scale here, it will enable some of the waves or some of the waves channel here. And I can also play something with the intensity of the color. So duplicating the wave texture, plugging the factor to the scale will again enable this kind of awesomeness. Now one thing should be kept in mind, whatever settings you are actually changing here must be set down here, otherwise the color won't mix and you would get weirder results. So for the scale, I'll be just selecting something like 0.8, because I want some not too much of the values down here. And for the distortion, I'll just be selecting 5, which will give a smooth interpolation as it does. And for the detailings, I will be selecting 3 of the detailings. It will enable some of the some glinting effects in the center, and slowly the lights smoothing out, and the detail scale to be about 1.8, so it gives much more thing. It's already looking good here, and the same settings to be done here as well. So I won't be doing it manually. So what I'll be doing, I'll just duplicate the wave texture with the settings and plug the factor to the factor value of my intensity here. So this is the color channel which has been created, and maybe this time you can go to saw, which has not saw, it would be sine, of course. So having this done, what you can do with here, you can play with the color how you want the color to be. So selecting this, I can give it more green as well as more red if you want, maybe something like that. And increasing the white slider will increase the red channel. So I've seen a lot of reference videos, and I saw that although these Aurora Borealis or Northern Lights are actually random in its color, yet they are primarily green. So I'll just give the red value a much smoother detail and leave the green channel to be its maximum output. And For this background I will just give a strength of 3 to increase the light factor of it, maybe 2. That was too much, maybe 2, yeah. And here I can introduce a bright contrast node and turn the contrast up to about 2 or maybe 0.12. Yeah, this will enable much of the lightings, which is actually getting good with the scene here. And maybe turn the brightness down a little bit, and let me see whether it's actually acting good. Oh, this was acting good. It was useless to add brightness and contrast here. And if I'm selecting this option, you can play with some other options like multiply or subtract in order to see whether the lights are actually getting, how the lights is actually interpolating with the scene, or how it is actually mixing with the scene. And when you're satisfied, you can take it. I just think that this one, or the soft light, is, sorry, not the soft light, mix is actually good options for it. Now if you want to play along with the distortion, you can even turn it down so as to give it much more freedom for its light. And for the detail scale, you can also increase to about 3 if you want. 3 would be too much, maybe 2. And for the details, you can increase the flow or the edge flow here. So I'm pretty much satisfied with whatever I've created here. Maybe some of the tweakings is needed to give my green channel much more freedom than that of the red one. And maybe if I'm going it to ease, it's actually not getting too good. Constant is actually turning it all down. Linear is actually again introducing this one, but in a very weird way. So, and cardinal also is not getting. So B-spline is the thing that I want, because it is actually giving a much smoother interface than it was before. Now if you want to move this channel a little bit, you can add another thing, which would be a mapping node, and use a texture coordinate to control the mapping with generated. Now one thing should be kept in mind: if you are actually plugging this one and if you are rotating this one, the color will act weird. So you have to again duplicate these 2 nodes and plug this with this channel also, in order to get that kind of effect, which will actually play with the scene much better. So let's rotate it along the z-axis and see whether what kind of scene is actually suitable for this one. Maybe if I'm scaling it down a little bit, it's actually not looking too bad. It's actually looking too bad. And okay, if I'm giving some more distortion to it, maybe nah, it's not looking too good. Just scaling it up, or maybe giving it a little bit of a detail. So this is actually your personal touch, how you want these scenes to interact. Maybe I think this one will act good here. Yeah, something like this one. This one is not looking too bad. And let me scale the channel of Y a little bit up, maybe even down. Nope. Okay, let's leave it where it was, because I see that it's not actually getting too good with the scene. And yeah, I think this one is suitable for this scene. So now what I'll have to do, I'll just select these 2, duplicate them, and just plug the vector to the vector so that there is again a good interpolation of the colors. So here we are. Let us revise it again. After creating the sky, I just used a mix shader, and for the mix shader, as I always did, I used now the background, which was indeed a mix shader of two different colors here. The one was it's according to you. You can also choose something like purple or maybe even blue, so as to give it much of the look here. And then the color or the factor would be actually being controlled by a Voronoi texture, which was again being controlled by a color ramp. And just playing with the sliders gave me a good result here, a satisfactory result here. And for the factor of this mix shader, I used another Voronoi texture with again the control of the color ramp. And for the scale, I didn't do anything with the scale of the Voronoi texture. Instead of doing anything manually here, what I gave a wave texture to control this one, to control this scale value here. And the wave texture was being tweaked with some of the settings, and I duplicated all these three things nodes with this one, so as to giving it different variations. Now if you want to add some sort of a smoky object here, you can do another thing. You can do another thing, can't you? You can introduce a mixed RGB to control these things, and use for the second value a noise texture, and plug that factor to the color here. And for this noise, just give it a little bit of a variations, and for the distortion maybe 0.2 is enough for this scene, because it's actually looking too huge. And here we are. We have just created some of an awesome lightings, which may symbolize something like this, northern lights. So if I want to rotate this, let me rotate this to about 180 degrees and see how is my light interacting. And it's interacting quite well. And yeah, I'm pretty much satisfied with the result here. So I'll save it right here. So this was another factor. I just gave 50% of the I did not do anything with this factor value. I just introduced a noise texture, and it just beautified my scene even more. Now having our scene or the world setup, I will just go to model just a plane and increase the size to about 12 and drag it all along the y-axis so it meets the bottom of my camera, something like that. And let us see how it is interpolating. It's interpolating quite nice. And just give my plane here a plain water body. So what I'll be doing, I'll just introduce some materials here, give it a diffuse material. Maybe I will do that when I'm finding this one. Yeah, I'll just delete the diffuse material and introduce a mixed shader. The first shader will be a glass with everything being set on, and for the second one will be a glossy shader with 100% reflection or 0% roughness, so it will reflect my Aurora Borealis here. Now having these things done, I will just introduce a texture to simulate some waves. I'll introduce a noise texture, plug the factor to the roughness here, not the roughness actually. I'll just take it and just feed this thing with a bump map so as to generate some waves. plug the color input to the height, and then plug the normal to the normal of my glossy, and let us see how it is actually interacting. It's interacting quite nice. And let me increase the scale to about way too much, maybe 200. And yeah, here it is. Maybe some little bit of a distortion to create some waves. And for the strength, I will be satisfied with this 100% value, and the distance maybe 0.25, maybe 0.15. Now it would be better with leaving it to a default value. And having these things done, you can see that the waves are generated, and it's also not looking too bad at all. Only one thing is to be fixed, is that the horizon is actually at the top of these planes. So grabbing it locking Z, I can lock it to the movement to the Z-axis and just scale it up a little bit until it finally goes to meet this one. And this is actually a good scene setup for creating this one. I'm actually satisfied with this scene, and let me apply location and rotation to it. Sorry, rotation and scale to it. So my scene is actually set up, and now what I'll be doing, let me first check this one. It has given a good width. Maybe if I'm increasing the width a little bit more, maybe 25.34 is good here. And I'll be introducing some depth of field, but later on. This would be added later on. Here what I'll be doing is add a landscape which will act as a mountain, or which will act like a mountain to my scene. So let me just drag this down a little bit for the convenience so that I can see. And for the noise type, I will just hit anything, maybe IBM fractal, no, not this one, obviously, distorted noise, anything which sounds good here will be maybe slick rock, and just give it a little bit of random seed and turn it up so that it mates with the scene, and just scale it up a little bit and then scale it, and locking to the Z-axis, just scaling it like that, so that the entire mesh here will be scaled according to the X and Y axis, leaving the Z axis all behind. So having these things done, it's not looking too good, so let me delete that. I just did it with a mistake. And selecting this area, if I'm selecting the middle of these two vertices by holding Alt and then right clicking and holding Shift and pressing S, snapping the cursor to the selected, automatically my cursor is selected there. And now I can add a landscape here. Let me add a landscape right now. I saw something like a plateau structure was there, and I cannot just find out where it was. Maybe it was multifractal. No, obviously not rigid. Maybe it will take some time. Let me give it time to create this one until I'm actually thinking which is actually selected for my scene. Okay, this one is looking good, isn't it? One thing I've noticed that I have to increase the strength of my world settings here because it's acting rather weird. It's too dull for my scene setup here. And having these things done, if I'm scaling it to X, just like that, and maybe even more, and scale it down to Z a little bit so as to make it a plane like structure, and yeah, it seems to be good. And I will just give it, because it is a dark material, I'll just give it a mix value of, I'll just introduce mix RGB, tell the color to the color, and give two different colors. One would be a perfect black, and the second one will be a very dark brown. So when I'm rendering it, it's actually creating some of the good effects here. Now behind this mesh, what I'll be doing, I'll add a sun lamp. No, not the sun lamp. I'll add a point lamp, and just bring the point lamp down. So I did a mistake here. Let me at first bring back my cursor. Let me save this one at first, and snapping my cursor to selected, I'll add a point lamp which will act as a reflection behind this one. And if I am seeing this and increasing the value of point lamp, maybe grab it along the z-axis a little bit until I can see it, like right over here. And let me increase the size and the strength to about way too much, maybe 50,000. Still it's not actually reflecting anything. It's actually reflecting something, but not too much. So what I'll be doing, I'll just drag it somewhere like there, and you can see that it's being lit, but very little I want. So let me turn that down to about 500, maybe something around 1000, and just play with the way I want my things to be. And this time what I'll be doing, I'll just go to the properties panel here. I'm going to the cycle settings. I'll just give the glossiness or the transmission as well as the glossy down, so there won't be any reflection at all. So the point of this is to give, let me now change this to an area lamp, and go to rectangle and just increase the size of X until it meets with my camera here. And if I'm turning it up, and I can see that the mountains are glowing, but not too much. So let me increase the size of it a little bit, and maybe rotating it on an x-axis so that the point, it is actually pointing towards this area, and it's looking rather nice. Now what I'll be doing for the mixture of this factor, I'll just introduce a noise texture with, of course, color ramp. I like this mode, color ramp, because you can play with the color, of the interpolation of the color. You will have more freedom with the interpolation of the color here, and sliding this all the way towards the center. You can see part of it is actually brown and a part of it is totally black. And just increase the scale to about 20, and it has taken a good shape, maybe 30, and for the distortion maybe 10. So here it is. My scene has finally been set, and one thing that I've noticed, I have to increase the strength of my sky, or the strength of the color output here a little bit. So what I will be doing, I'll just go to the sky and select the sky and hit tab to go into the sky node, and just give a little bit of strength here. Maybe 2 is good, and yeah, it has increased the quality of my image 10 folds. So I'll save it and just give it a test render with only 50 samples in order to check how is my work being done here. So let me hit F12 and let's see how it is rendered. And you can see that it's actually not looking bad. Only a little bit of a tweaking is to be done. Of course, it would be done in the compositor with the color channel here, but till now it's actually not looking too bad. So what I'll do, I'll just select with the final touch up of this scene. I'll just select my camera and click on the limits so as to give my camera some sort of limits. And for the depth of field focus, I'll just increase the slider to something around here where it is actually touching the mountain, maybe down a little bit right around here, and change the aperture type to f-stop and give it 11, because I've seen that the depth of field for landscape photography like this results very good with 11 f-stop depth of field. So let us give another test render to see whether it's actually been created with good effects or not. And yeah, it's actually quite satisfactory. Only I have to do is to work in the compositor. So I'll divide my screen again, and this time I will just go to the node editor and click on this button and click on use nodes and backdrop. The compositing will be very simple, so I'll just backdrop it by hitting shift control and then left clicking on this area will enable the compositing or the viewer panels here. And let's just give it a color. I don't want to give any filter. I will just give a color balance node and just plug this with the composite as well, so it will be auto rendered. And just turn up the white channel or the third channel here. What is it? It's a gain, or the gain channel here a little bit, so as to give it more vibrance here. And for the gamma, I will be selecting something like a green, so as to give the green one even more vibrant look than it was before. And for the left, I'll be taking the blue channel a little bit, so the sky is actually blue. And let me just correct this one a little bit, it was too blue, and just increase the strength of this gamma even more, and see the image is not looking so bad. Having this done, let me save my project again and let me give a final render with 500 samples this time for the sake of the tutorial. And let's see how is my image looking. I'll pause my video recording till I am finished with my renderings here. So let us hit F12. So that here you can see that my image is finished with the compositing, and it's looking more vibrant than it was before. So here it is. This concludes this video. That was the Northern Lights or the Aurora Borealis scene, and I just used only 4 physical objects to create this kind of a scene: a plane, a landscape, an area lamp, and of course the camera. And the entire thing was done in the node editor. I hope you guys won't find it too difficult to follow with this tutorial, and I hope you guys would like my videos. And if you want some more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel and hit thumbs up to this video. And Yeah, that concludes the tutorial. Have a nice day. Peace.